Hi, I want to welcome you to the Wellbeing Volunteers United. Thank you so much for coming in. This is a great opportunity to give back to society. This particular initiative is really for making sure that India is safe when this pandemic is going on, at least they're mentally and emotionally safe. And people such as yourself who've come together to bring this extreme network to support our fellow citizens. I really applaud you because it's so commendable that you've come together in this hard time. It really shows that you're intrinsically driven and you're extremely excited to give back. And we've had over 450 people come in, and I think that is heartwarming. 450 people who could be sitting at home getting demotivated have come out to join this platform as volunteers, who've come to join this platform as saviors to others, to really uplift them, to take them out of their misery. And we have a tagline that says, "Ear for you." And we really are. The Goa government has taken this platform as well, and the Maharashtra State Commission for Women has also started sharing our platform with other people. It's important that if you all have some kind of influence in society, please share it, because we want to reach as far and as wide as we can so that we really can help the ones in need. Um, we have this in Hindi, we have this in English, we have it in Marathi, and we have it in Gujarati, and we'll be adding more languages as we go along. There are people who speak all languages, in fact, because not everybody is from one place, but across India. In fact, outside of India too. So we've given a helpline number that is a mobile number, but unfortunately, because it's a mobile number, that is not a free helpline. Our free helpline is 1-800 121 0980, 98 for WV. And that's who we are. And so welcome to this. And I'm going to start our slideshow, and I'm going to walk you through what you need to learn. I was doing this in person before, but because the demand has become so high and I need to start mobilizing people to call in so that the outreach is noticeable. So I'm recording this, and hopefully if you have any questions or concerns, there will be trained therapists who are sitting in the same meeting to help you with that. So see you on the other side, and when we're done, I'll come back on screen and talk to you then. I'm going to start the screen share right now. Thank you. So once again, welcome to the Wellbeing Volunteers United, solving today's challenges together. We are, like I said, joining hands with all kinds of people, practitioners, psychiatrists. In fact, our psychiatry department is run by Dr. Kirsi Chavda, who will be manning anybody who needs severe attention and immediate attention. We have got with us a helpline. We have got with us mobilizers and ambassadors. And I think that you'll be very happy to know that we have an escalation process. So when somebody is talking about things that our volunteers are not equipped to handle, we do have certified psychological counselors on our panel who they can reach out to. We have therapists, we have doctors, we have hospitals. We have currently 2 hospitals. We're going to be growing this today, tomorrow, day after. We're going to get everybody involved, and they can share the helpline as it were theirs. Because at the end of the day, this is a collective. It really has nothing to do with us independently, but really something to do with everybody. So our initiative is really to move people from distress to eustress. This is a distress line, and that is very important to note, because distress is what really holds you back. Eustress is the kind of stress that really propels you forward. So it depends on the kind of people that you are in, the kind of solutions that you find, whether you have a fight, flight, or freeze reaction, really compounds to whether you manage to uplift the stress and use it as a mobilizer, or whether you limit that stress and create a, a burden around yourself and it bogs you down. It really depends. So now we have a platform called the Collective Platform, which is housed by our partner, Round Glass, who is a technology enabler, and we've used that technology to bring our solutions to you. We would intend that everybody starts off on a WhatsApp group, but very quickly moves into this platform so that all our communication can be done there. It just is more professional and is also much easier to handle because technology is an enabler and it simplifies processes. And since there is a technology, I urge you to please get onto this platform. All of you, if you've come on, you should have a WhatsApp group that you're on. That's number one. You should have filled out the form that was given to you. I will take you through the form. And you should have read this material. And there is a volunteer reference form as well. And I would like you to have gone through the volunteer reference form. Now, we all know that mental health is an epidemic, but it has magnified in the recent times. Magnified to such an extent that we only will know the repercussions in a couple more weeks. There have already been an increase in suicides, an increase in violence, domestic violence and abuse. And I think that being in this situation, the repercussions of the psychosocial dynamic of human behavior is something that we really need to address. We, on this platform, have a disclaimer where we will not be sharing any information about COVID-19. We do not have the capability of talking about the disease. We do have the capability, and our sole purpose is to bring mental relief to those who need it. And mental relief due to this situation is definitely a place where we want to be, and we want to have them reach out to us because we can move them from the place of disharmony to a little bit of peace and harmony, and give them the steps and strategies that they require to be able to navigate these times. India has one of the highest rates of mental health disease. People don't understand what mental health is. They understand the word stress, but they do not understand the massive matrix of mental health disharmonies. These are people who obviously understand that they have a mental health issue, but what about the people that don't? They don't come into the survey. Despite that, 1 in 4 Indians go through mental health challenges at some point in their lives. We have the largest rates of youth suicide, and it's a huge problem in our system. We also have 47% of the elderly that are depressed. We also have 47%, 47.8%, they say, of our employees in the workplace are depressed. But I want you to be cognizant of the fact that all these numbers are indicative of only the people that have that are in urban cities. In terms of your number of employees, that's in an urban setting. What about the farmer suicides and the fact that we have mental health as an issue across the board? Nothing about that is really mentioned. And I think one of the most important things for us to also recognize is that we, as mobilizers of mental well-being and mental health, really need to be a pioneer in this, because there are two reasons. This epidemic cannot be curbed by one person or one company. I mean, that is why Podar Foundation is not doing this. But there's a collective of different NGOs that have come together. There's a collective of different companies that have come together, different institutions that have come together. Because at the end of the day, we are only as good as what we can bring back and do for society. So I want you to focus a little bit on the aggravated situation. I would like you to learn about the aggravated situation. I would like you to read up on our collective. We have a host of information that really takes you through what is the repercussion on the human behavior due to this stress that they have to combat. And I urge you to really only read information that is valid from valid sources. So this is from the WHO, and they've put together a mental health and psychosocial consideration during COVID-19. And it gives you a whole lot of indicators of what really happens and how one should deal with those situations. I want you to read this because you will have the link. Please read this. It's also on our collective. It's important that you start reading all the material. And if you know this subject, great. I'm happy for you because I'm happy for me. I'm happy that we have trained people here. Also, in this entire in this entire endeavor, we're really hoping to arrest the unrest. We're hoping to build resilience of people, and we're hoping that this becomes a successful model for other countries to adopt, because nobody really has the innate wisdom that India really brings. And this collective is so rich in ideas, so rich in thought, so rich in their ability to give and to nurture, that I feel blessed to be part of it. All volunteers that come to us will be given a protocol, and this protocol is very important for them to recognize, because we do have trained therapists, but we want to make sure that there is a uniformity in the way in which we approach our callers, so that they understand that they are reaching out to a institution, a voluntary organization that has that is speaking the same language. So we have to speak the same language. For this, we have numbers as well that we've given you, phone numbers of the calls that come through to you. So the 1-800 number is the outreach number, but the numbers that come to you are 3 other types of numbers which you need to save under the name of Wellbeing Volunteers United. And this in itself will help you garner that capability of being that person. So you wear the hat of the Wellbeing Volunteers, and you speak that language. Now we'll be taking you through this, and it isn't really difficult. All we're working with is stress, trying to understand how to guide that stress to a positive path, so that a change in the physical body, the emotional body, the behavioral body can be done. I think this is extremely important, because their response level to society, to the mammoth pandemic in society, is really what's leading them to a space of hopelessness, a space of loneliness, a space of deep discomfort, a space of extreme anxiety, a space for extreme panic, and a space of extreme abuse sometimes. And I want you to recognize that not everybody has large spaces. There are a lot of people living together in small spaces, and there's no access to going out. There's no access to reaching out to other people as well, except for on a technology platform, be a Facebook, Instagram, or whatever their social media platform is, or phone calls, WhatsApp. But even though that's the outreach, it isn't the same thing as human to human contact. And I want to take a side note. I find this extremely interesting, because whenever we're talking about building solutions for technology, and I always thought in the past that technology is really going to take away from our face-to-face interaction. We're going to get used to interacting over a screen, over a 2D dimension, rather than a 4D, 5D, 6D now dimension. And I find that luckily we have the technology now to be able to still hold people up. Luckily we are able to utilize that, and luckily we're able to give back using that platform. But it still doesn't take away from the face-to-face interaction that we have with people. And therefore, when we are working on this, we want to make sure that we understand that people who come on need to recognize where their stress lies. They need to recognize whether it's in the mind, body, and spirit connection. We need to explain to them what is activated and what can be used in terms of the other connections to deactivate the hypervigilance. And the hypervigilance is not, it really is not a permanent state if we get them to understand their modus operandi and give them the skills for them to be able to change that. One of the very important aspects is, again, to highlight what really happens in your health. What happens in the mind in terms of the stress? What is it really creating? Is it creating distress in your health? Is it causing an aggravated system of cardiovascular diseases? What about digestive disorders? What about accelerated aging? What is it doing? Is it weakening your immune system? This is important, because if it is weakening your immune system, you are not helping yourself. And in times like this, you need to have a strong immunity. So you must, at all points, be in a healthy state of mind. understand that your healthy state of mind will bring about a healthy state in your body. Um, Now, talking about the distress on relationships, it is extremely taxing on relationships. We've already had a lot of couples calling in. We've had a lot of people fighting about being together. You may have loved your spouse or your the family member that you're with, but this kind of continuous interaction can cause a lot of friction. People are not all the same, and challenging your belief system on an everyday basis in your home can create a lot of negativity. But you need to learn how to deal with that negativity, because we don't have an escape at this point. So given the resources that we have, what really can we do to make sure that people feel better, that people learn better, that people live better? And that really is what we, as the Wellbeing Volunteers United, are here to do. We are to unite them to their own seeds of happiness. We are to bridge those gaps for them and help them overcome their false notions and irrational belief systems. So going to your performance levels and why things like this, situations like this, demotivation like this can really cause a lack in your capability of sustaining healthy work. People have gone into a slump. I know I've been talking to people over the past 2 weeks, and the vibrancy that they have in just their energy, and you feel it when they're talking to you, has really begun to collapse. So this is the need of the hour, and it's important that we take it seriously. It is serious. People will start calling us. Be patient. If you are impatient about people calling us and wonder why they're not calling us, be patient, because people haven't heard about it. When they hear about it, this is going to catch fire, and you are positioned to help. And I want to thank you for that, because we need this. India has to come together to uplift this mental health problem. It cannot be done by one government, one person, or one NIMHANS, or one society. It cannot be done like that. It's all of us together that need to be able to bring bandwidth to this issue, and to be able to start resolving these issues immediately. So people who are calling you are not calling as a preventive, they're calling when they're in distress. So therefore, this module is only made for people in distress. And we are utilizing a very simple module of a Kharkov and the ABC model, and maybe even a little bit of REBT, which are the counseling modules. It's not very difficult. Most of you who come on are volunteers and do have a background in psychology. And even if you don't, we've simplified this and given you a script, so you'll be able to handle that really well. Now, I want you to understand that the first thing that you need to learn is really how to listen. This is crucial, because we don't know how to listen. We move from one sentence to the next. Somehow we've been trained to rally a conversation without introspecting on what has been said. And at this point, that is what we're going to do. We're going to talk about how to really listen, how to listen to feeling and content, how to respond to that feeling and content, and to make sure that that feeling and content is narrated back to the caller, because the caller needs to recognize what their thoughts are, what the thoughts sound like, whether there's any irrationality in that thought or whether that thought is rational. They need to be able to understand if that is something that can that is positive for them, or if it's something that is negative for them. If it is positive for them, they continue with it. If it is negative for them, they enforce their right of choice and they change it. And that's what we're trying to do. So when we're listening, now remember, we do not have, we only have 37% of what we need when we're in conversation with people. Because if 93% is everything that's nonverbal, and 7% is your what you're saying in words, then imagine from the 100%, we only have 7% of words, but we can also utilize our tone of voice to be empathetic. We can also start working on, trying to explain to them through responses that we are available, we are listening. We want to make sure that we go to a place when the phone call rings and you can see the numbers of Volunteer Wellbeing United. I urge you to please go to a place that is silent, where you can attend to the call and focus your energy on helping the person that is on the call. This is not a platform for you to showcase your intellect, but a platform for you to showcase your empathy. And luckily, everybody here is empathetic and intellectual, and therefore it is a great combination, because you'll be able to navigate their stories and be able to help them get to that one uh, hope, one ray of hope. And that's what we need to do. And we solve one issue at a time. So when we are talking to somebody and they come with a problem, they might come with a plethora of problems, but you want to focus on the one, because in this call, it is only 15 minutes long. We hope that you will take that 15-minute and really make it concrete for the client to come up to a solution for what they are feeling and what they are going through, what they are thinking about, what their bodies are going through. Because again, the somatics, the psychosomatic, and all of this is connected. And we need to be able to do that. We need to be able to learn how to ask deeper questions. And therefore, even in the reference form that I've given you online, you will have indicators of what you should be using as a technique at that point. Now, you need to, I'll give you an example. So somebody calls you up and says, I'm really extremely, I'm constantly thinking about my financial status, and I don't know what I'm going to do. And you have to pick up content and feeling, and you can say, first you validate, you say, I can understand that you're going through a lot. This is a really difficult time for all of us. And the financial losses are immense and intense. And, we recognize this. And then you go into, you seem extremely worried about the future. Tell me a little bit more about that. So you've given him a context of, I understand what you're going through. You've told him that, you validated what he is going through. You've approached the subject with reframing what he has said. And you've done this by making sure that it's concrete enough in one sentence for him to reflect back on it. And then he reflects back and says, yes, you're right. And then again, you can say, and how does that make you feel when you think about this? And when you do that, you get into your mind, body, and spirit. Again, sorry, let me just go back here. You get into what happens in the mind, body, and spirit connection at this point. And you ask questions like, when this happens to you, what really happens? You'll get into, say, for example, right here, I feel a loss of motivation. I feel nervous. The loss of motivation is emotional. I have a difficult time sleeping. It becomes physical. And, I feel like taking to drugs and alcohol, but there's a scarcity of it right now and I can't get out to get this, but I'm feeling extremely overwhelmed, right? So he'll give you examples of where his stress lie and how that stress is getting displayed in his everyday life. And going back to the fact that you have understood him, you have thought about what he's saying, you have thought about his feeling, you have identified how he is positioning himself, and then you move on to seeking meaning from him, like, do you understand what I'm saying? Comes as a way of him saying yes or no when you respond to content and feeling, and that will be automatically you checking for a response. Another thing very important is you have to speak from their wavelength, their frame of reference, and not yours. You need to get to never giving solutions, but eliciting solutions from people. Like, for example, if this gentleman is going through that, you can tell him, if you tell him that, you know what, I think you shouldn't worry. It's going to all get better. You're going to make your money again, and you'll be fine. You have to really stop, because you don't know that. That's not true. You don't know what's going to happen to the economy. That's also not true. You can't give false hope. Yeah, and then on top of that, if you say something like, in fact, why don't you, why don't you start to do, say, ABCD thing, whatever that may be. Why don't you use this time effectively to take up an online training course? When you give a suggestion like that, you don't know whether the person can afford this online training course. And if this course is for free, also, you don't know whether the person has that inclination. You don't know whether that person would find this comment like not acceptable to him. You don't know any of that. So what should you do instead? What you should do instead is ask them, given that, we really don't have any movement or traction in this domain, what do you think are some of the things that you could do to ease this distress, that is when he will come up with solutions. And maybe he'll say, maybe I should spend my time, instead of looking at the stock market, maybe I should spend my time more effectively. And you'll say, well, that's a great idea. You should spend your time more effectively. What are some of the suggestions that you have? Like, what are some of the things that you think that you can do to to heal yourself, or to curb this distress, or to make sort of valid use of your time? And then they will give you their viewpoint, and you can firm it up with a goal setting which he gives you again. So, like, why don't you research tomorrow, is not something that you can say. You will say to him, that's great that you want to do this. How do you think you'd go about it? And then he'd say, maybe I'll start researching this. Then you say, okay, when do you think you can start that? And then he will carry on that conversation. So you're chunking it down to getting him to a point of actually being able to give a practical solution, and you're giving him a thread to hold on to, which will guide him in his journey to moving from distress to eustress. It's that one little thread that they need. They need to feel it internally because they need to do it. So it's not like, hey, you know what, I'm going to help you and you're going to get better because I'm helping you. No, you're helping them help themselves. And that is the most important thing. So you've got to look at that from that point of view, and you've got to take every session from that point of view, that you are a guide, a channel at best, to take them away from the distress and move them into eustress, or at least move them into positive action. We have given you a platform where you need to record everything that comes in. You need to be able to reduce it to a very fine statement, so that it is concrete. You recite it, you say this back to them, they reflect on it, and then you put it into a time and action calendar for them, and make sure that they follow it by asking them to put an alarm for themselves to remind themselves of the situation and the situation that they've drafted for themselves now, to help them alleviate themselves from the current hardships that they're facing internally. Whenever they come up with something, remember that it's important not to take people at face value. The presenting problem is not always the problem. What they've called with may not be actually what their problem is. So you've got to make sure that you really get some facts in place, like, when really did this happen? How did this happen? What happened when that happened? How did that feel for you? And what kind of, what is the evidence that this is a function of reality, a fact? A fact. When you say evidence of belief, you're getting to what is the fact in the story, and what is the fact, and what is their perception of what is happening. That is extremely important to identify, because when you are talking to people who have stories and victimized mindsets, you cannot assume that what they're saying is right. What you do need to do is really think deeply about what they're saying, and focus a little bit on understanding what really the motivations are, what really the needs are of this person, and also what they are trying to move towards. That is extremely important. And I want to move on to the next slide, because it's extremely important to understand how to build this. So I'm just going to give you an example really quickly. And that example is this person that called in once said that he was very disappointed because his colleagues and his peers and his superiors did not value him enough at work. And he was very angry about this. And he wanted to know how to change their mind. What should he do to change their mind? And I want you to think about all the irrational belief systems in that statement for just 5 seconds. Thank you for doing that. Now let's work on really understanding how you've moved forward. You've listened to the person. You make sure that when you're listening to them, they're not slouching. Because if they're slouching, they're not motivated to continue to make it a space of change. Their bodies are not positioned for change, and you need to position their body for change. So first of all, you sit up, because body language, tone of voice are all like something that come across in the message, because it comes across in the tone of voice. And it's important. Sometimes people ask questions when they want to really express how they're feeling. So you will then turn that question around and ask them, so I feel that your question is ABCD thing. Is that correct? Yes. And what about that do you want to actually understand? And then you move on from there. So that's important. Okay. Um, so we need to make sure that we understand how to move a question into an actionable, open-ended question for us to elicit information from them. You are not there to answer questions. You're there to really make sure that they can get to their place of relief by utilizing all the skills that they have to nourish themselves. Because we're not going to be there 24 hours for them. They need to find that strength within them. The only way they can train for this is really through you explaining to them how they can take this forward. Make sure you do not answer questions immediately, but you paraphrase what they are saying. You paraphrase by really understanding content and feeling and narrating that back to them. I've already taken you through this. We are talking about thoughts, we're talking about feelings, we're talking about behavior. We are specifically moving from understanding what's really happening in the physical body, what's happening in the emotional body, what's happening in the behavioral body, and the interaction of the three. So if somebody comes in with, I don't feel like I should even wake up in the morning, there's nothing to do, that is somebody who's definitely going through some kind of deep depression or deep sadness. And you can ask, and when you're sort of, what kind of behavior does this display for you? So again, the person will say something like, I don't know, I'm just lying around. I tend to overeat when I'm doing these things, and I don't even know how to mobilize myself. And then you can say, is that having an impact on your physical body? And they'll say, yes, my back is beginning to hurt. I have whatever other situation they have. They can have pain in their joints. They can have extreme fatigue in their body. So it really depends. So you link up all three, because that gives you an inroad into really navigating this conversation better. We do have a model that we picked up from the Therapist Aid online. It's very easy. That's why I put this here. You are trying to understand what the activating event is. You are trying to figure out what their belief system is and what the consequences of that belief system are on their being. And then you want to move them by disputing this belief system into a new belief system. This is really the model, and we've tried to simplify this by putting this as